to the Most High Show. Tonight, I have a room full of guests and have a pleasure of recording this show again. Mira's here. She's going to be sharing her story. We're going to be playing a clip from a Narcan project, this little thing called Restoration Rotary that we're a part of, and talk a little bit about the Narcan projects that are happening through that initiative. And Mira's going to share her story. She's sitting in the seat of service, and she can't wait. She's got bright pink on, and her shirt is as loud as her personality. I'm looking forward to it. So welcome to the Most High Show.
Welcome to the Most High Show, a show about recovery, spirituality, and all that. Produced, posted, and hosted by people in recovery who have strength and hope and want to share it with you. If you or someone you love is suffering, we want you to know you are not alone. This is the Most High Show.
All right, we're back. And so listen, this clip that I'm going to play is, I met Suleiman through Instagram a couple years ago. And we immediately connected, and I flew up there and did a documentary series called Road to Recovery. And I got a chance to witness Kensington Beach, North Philly area for myself. It was heartbreaking, but it was also hopeful because Suleiman, who used to run around them streets getting high, is now running around there giving back. And a year later, I got the opportunity to serve in a Rotary Club, Restoration Rotary. And what Suleiman had, he was giving out pizza and clothes and stuff, but what he didn't have was Narcan to distribute. And this is a real key area to get Narcan because this is a high area of active drug. It's basically a citywide open injection site. And so we got Narcan into his hands, and then Kirk and I flew up there to document the distributing of the Narcan. So you're going to watch a clip of that, and then we're going to talk a little bit about Narcan and about this initiative of distributing it in the high-risk areas.
Narcan nasal spray may counteract the life-threatening effects of an opioid overdose. Since most accidental overdoses occur in a home setting, it was developed for first responders as well as family, friends, and caregivers with no medical training required.
So if we're looking at this was just given to Restoration Rotary 10 minutes ago, 15 minutes ago. And now it's on the street and it's about to be given to those that are in need.
I normally just put it on the table like that. I can flip it for you though. Make sure you get your Narcan. You might see someone who might need to save a life. Sign your name, no cursive writing. No cursive writing, please.
Well, this is more of a laid-back day. It's you know, we were out here like usually all winter. We out here through any weather, but it's a more laid-back day, you know. Around the time, man, it usually be like more people out here. Yeah. You know what
I mean? All right, so for 11 years, I had the privilege of working for an international celebrity. And I remember a painting that was on the wall in the office. And the painting was of these hands. And I always thought, what's the significance of that painting? And I asked one day. And what they said is it's a symbol of someone who's gotten over the wall and they're reaching back down to help pull someone up. So it's not a hand, it's a hand up, not a hand out. And as I was thinking about our trip, and I just thought about the significance of that painting and the imagery, that it's not a handout, it's a hand up. Here's the hand. I've gotten over this, and I can help you to get over this by reaching back and giving help. All right, so you just saw a clip from Narcan Distribution Project. That whole documentary is about 20 minutes long, and it's on the Most High Media app. You can watch that, check it out. So the reason why we're talking about this is we did this project in North Philly, and the club is called Restoration Rotary. It's the first cause-based Rotary club that's virtual, that's dealing with mental health and addiction. And so we did this in North Philly. We also have members in Dallas and Mississippi and here in Georgia. So we're doing a distribution project here in Georgia next week. And we're partnering with a couple organizations here, Atlanta Dream Center, and they're going to be our guides so that we know which alleys to walk down and which ones not to, really, more importantly. When we went up there in Philly with Suleiman the first time, he's like, we don't go down that street, and then we don't go here, and I'm not taking you in any further as I'm walking around with this $3,000 camera, right? So we have a guide, and what it is that, Narcan is something that will arrest somebody's overdose. It'll stop the overdose in the middle of it. And the nasal spray is really easy to implement. You don't need a ton of training. It's really easy. It's just like doing any kind of nasal spray. So it's really easy to stop someone from overdosing. By getting the Narcan in these high-risk areas, we're getting it in the hands of people who are going to be there when someone is overdosing, because they're going to be there with their friends. They're all using. They're sitting in trap houses or alleys or wherever. So this project, I think, is really important because it's giving a chance. Like, if you're dead, you can't recover. So by helping you not die, we're giving you a chance to recover. And that's really what the Narcan project is about. That's what Restoration Rotary is about, is trying to create initiatives. So I just wanted to highlight the work that Rotary is doing in this world. And if you'd like to know more, we'll put a clip in the description of this podcast of where to, join a club, come visit one of our virtual meetings. We're open to anyone who's in recovery and who wants to serve, or anyone who's really got a heart for these people who are suffering from mental health and addiction issues. So that's the Restoration Rotary pitch in a nutshell. We're going to take a commercial break because we got commercials.
Oh.
Yeah. It's our own stuff.
Okay.
It's not like we're making... And then we're going to be back with Mira, and we're going to hear about her story and what all happened with that. All right? We'll be back.
Why Most High Media? Because I don't have the answers. Other people do. And learning from the experiences, the stories, the perspectives, seeing people who've been through the darkest of circumstances and then have come out of it on the other side and have lived extremely exciting, fulfilling lives and tapped into a way of being and a way of living, but it's actually real and obtainable. That's why.
We packed up to tell the story of a young lady who lost her daughter.
So there's a extremely high correlation between suicide, mental illness, and substance abuse.
Come on the ground. Come on the ground. Sir.
I think as of this year, there's about 14 million people in America who have a co-occurring disorder, and a little more than 7% of them seek help for it.
In my addiction, I felt like I was better off dead.
I'm here to talk about my daughter, Megan, who committed suicide when she was 28.
There's enough hope in the people that do recover to where I keep going and keep showing up at places where I'm needed.
Ain't no high like the Most High. Ain't no high. Ain't no high like the Most High. Ain't no high. Holla if you need some things.
like love and change. I'm not talking coins and things or diamond rings. Everybody wants some change, but don't nobody wanna do nothing till the pain they can't stomach. And they told me that I believed them, so I gave them to the. Everybody thought that I was tripping, saying that I be acting different. Ain't no high like the most high. Ain't no high like the most high. Ain't no high like the most high. Ain't no high. Ain't no high like the most high.
Welcome back to the Most High Show. If you're watching, you got to see Megan's prayer. You got to see some of the content. You got to see the T-shirts while that awesome song was playing. If you're listening, you got to listen to all that. And you can watch. And if you want to watch, you can download the app, Most High Media. You can watch there on your Roku, Apple TV, on your iPhone, whatever. And you can also watch on Stir TV on the America versus Addiction channel. If you're just listening and you're ready to take your experience of this debacle to a whole new level, you want to see what's happening, you want to see the brightness of this pink shirt I'm describing in this episode, then you might want to watch in one of those areas. So with me today, this evening, is Mira, somebody who I've recently met, but very much respect the work that you're doing and that she's doing in the community. And she's got an infectious kind of attitude and glow about her. And that's, I need more people like that in my life. So I'm really happy to have Mira on the show sharing her story.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, you doing all right?
I'm doing okay, yeah.
Yeah?
I'm very nervous.
Is this a little surreal?
This is very surreal.
Yeah.
I was thinking about all the stuff that has just happened the last few months, and now I'm sitting at a podcast. It's just...
Yeah. Yeah.
Pretty cool.
It's kind of crazy.
It is crazy.
Well, I always say, you try, you think cocaine's wild, try following God.
I know.
Yeah. That's a real wild ride.
It's, for the longest time I had it messed up where I was just thinking about, we were just having a conversation earlier, just talking about if you focus on recovery and God, all the things that you want will come. The moment that you switch it out to something else, then you already lose.
Yeah.
But this time has been different. It's just been, my focus has been just towards God, everything that I'm doing,
Yeah.
So
what are you doing? What's a day in the life of Mira like?
Man, it's pretty wild actually. Every day is just, it's all service. It's how can I help out? Basically, this whole idea was just trying to figure out how it would be easy for other people if they want to get clean, how to do that. And wherever it was hard for me is how I'm trying to improve it to make it easier for those folks. And my phone starts ringing very early in the morning and has gone nonstop all day. But I try to go out to the streets and like the Gateway area, and there's some other places of Ozone Street. I don't know that area too well. I just learned about that, and just kind of go out there and like the gas station by my house and just stand out there and just talk to the people that are out there and share a little bit of my experience. When I first started, I was trying to get in the van, I could take you to detox. That doesn't work very well. Don't try that. But I just started sharing with them. I used to be out there using drugs just like them at a gas station or walking on the street, and I know what it's like. And so I'd show them a couple mug shots or whatever, and make some jokes and buy them some snacks and do a little karaoke in the van, so they can warm up, and just treat them like you should be treated. They say the person without a home or someone out there hardly, it takes a whole year for them to actually hear their name. Yeah. So I try to make a point into asking them what their name is and just showing love. So, after I've been doing that for quite some time, I've seen people start to come towards I want to get clean, and I'll show them videos of different programs or different opportunities or just kind of what I did. And, they just tell me they want to go on and get clean. So I make that happen.
You make it happen.
Yeah.
Then you put them in the van.
Then I throw them in the van.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And get them to that.
Yeah.
And how long have you been doing that?
It's been only for about a couple months now.
Okay.
I mean,
and
yeah.
what made you decide to start doing that?
Well, I could see myself like, you know, I don't know. Finally, I finished my program in Lawrenceville. I moved into Bankhead area. I thought it was Buckhead, but it's actually Bankhead. I got the B's messed up. Everybody's like, that's such a nice area. I'm like, you really think so? I don't know. And I found out it was Bankhead. But the pastor and his wife own a house out there, and a bunch of people that are in ministry are in that house. But I wasn't seeing myself in ministry. I knew it would be of service of some sort, but I didn't know. And so just being over there, and then, you know, getting the church is like, we know that I was spending a lot of money on Uber, and you know, my pastor was like, all right, from Sunday to Wednesday, you can use the van, just, you know, take care of it or whatever. And I for the first time in a long time, I was driving around, and I just saw all these people. You know, you never, like, I was on a bicycle before this, so now I'm in a van and I'm driving around, and I'm like, I just saw all these people that need help. And I just, you know, I didn't want to take that vehicle and just use it for selfish needs. I just felt like it was such a blessing, everything that I was given. And then I have such a way with people that they need my help. So I just kind of drove around, and, you know, it was really overwhelming because I just didn't know how to help people. But I just started with like a little bit at a time, just, you know, the ones at my gas station by my house. That's how it started. And just hanging out with them, you know. So then you know, and the reason why that really started is I just saw myself, like I was saying to you before, is like I started to go off the path, you know, not really, not using, but just behavior wise. And, you know, I said, as much as I'm doing that other stuff, I need to start doing more of service and get involved and more with God. And that's what I did. I just went like 100 miles an hour into that.
Yeah.
And then all those behaviors kind of went away.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty
this
cool.
was like almost like a divine moment of clarity,
right?
That you had, right? To say, all right, because it usually, like they'll say like a relapse doesn't start from the point when you use.
Right.
The relapse can start from a month to 2, even 3 months before that.
Absolutely.
When your thinking starts to veer into that kind of old selfish ways or self-centered thinking and those kind of things, and it's like eventually you can get back to where you were using again.
Right. It's very sneaky, you know, and it uses your own voice with your own feelings and adds a couple dollar signs onto it, and then boom, here you go. Right. You know, and it's not all that's you know, bright or shiny kind of thing, you know. And so I could see it, and I'm very self-aware of my behaviors and what goes on and what's happened in the past, and say, you know, I need to really do something, you know. And so what a fix is service, you know, and getting involved. Yeah. So like when people start to see that their behaviors start to go off, or they start doing stuff that's just not really the Christian way or recovery way or whatever, you know, that's why I just saw that. So I was like, you know what, let me just get in and go and help out other people, and that just stopped. Yeah. Which is pretty.
Something happens in you when you start becoming others centered. Right. And do you find, as your day in your own recovery and your own program of recovery, do you find it that they work together, or how's that?
As far as like
you in this service role, right? But you're also, you know, doing things that in places where someone's pouring into you, right? I mean,
right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure that, you know, basically it's all kind of ties together, you know. I feel that the service and doing these for others is just showed me a new, I don't know if I'm answering your question right, but, anyways, you know, I'm, you know, showing people a different way through service, and then that love that I'm showing them is giving me love back and filling in me. And I remember this guy that I helped out, he got clean, and then he saw this lady out on the streets, and she asked him for food, and he's like, I don't have food, but I know if you want to get clean, I have the girl that can help you. So he has the girl on the phone with me on the bus, And he's like, Mira, this girl wants to get clean. I was like, all right, put her on the phone. We started doing all of her stuff to get her in. And he took her back to the detox. He just got out 2 days prior.
Wow.
And took her back there, took a picture with her. He's all smiling. He's like, Mira, do you feel like this every time? And I was like, every time, brother. He's like, I'm going to do more of this. I'm like, that's why I do it. Because it's just like seeing someone at their lowest get to a point of where they can change their life. There's nothing like that feeling.
Yeah.
Because we've all been there before, you know?
Yeah.
Like I was just arrested, so I didn't get a chance to have that.
Right.
You know, I had my aha moment behind bars. You know, I'm like,
Right.
oh, that's right. That's where I'm supposed to be. You know.
Yeah.
So.
Well, you know, it wasn't always serving others and chasing after God and trying to help people. Right.
Okay.
Our producer's adjusting mics here. It wasn't always about helping other people.
Right.
And chasing after God.
Right. No.
Right. So, you know, David, who's a mutual friend of ours, calls that seat that you're in the seat of service. Because it's a service for you to come here and share not just what you're doing today, but what happened, you know. So when did drugs and alcohol become really relevant in your life?
Right. Well, I used to be very big, and I had a weight loss surgery. I was like 350 pounds, and so I was always one of the guys. And food was more of my you know, my addiction. And then once I had that surgery, the food couldn't be the addiction anymore. And so then I started losing weight and going out more, feeling better. And then the drugs came into the scene. You know, that I remember that exact moment that happened, and I was just like, wow, this is totally different feeling than I've ever had before. Just a feeling of wanting to be accepted, you know, I guess is what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
And, you know, came the men, came all these things, and that's, it just, I don't remember exactly when it started, but it was right after I had my surgery.
Yeah.
And then it just took off from there. There was some times before, a little bit of usage. I mean, my first drug I ever tried was speed and ecstasy. I was like, I went to Australia. My mom says, don't miss your flight, don't have sex, and don't do drugs. And I didn't miss my flight. So, yeah. Got him. No, I'm just but, you know, and I came back from that trip, I was a little bit different. You know, we had house parties and stuff, and I would drink, and there were some things I saw before. Just, you know, just trying to find my place. You know, I was in the Latin club. I'm not Latin. I was in the Tibetan club. I'm not Tibetan. Trying to be in the swim team in high school. I'm not really with that group, you know, and so I was always trying to find my place. And when I tried the drugs for the first time, I felt like I was like accepted, I guess, you know?
Yeah. So there's like a social, that's something that I think is very common, this social aspect of addiction, right? Because everyone else is using, you know, and so everyone's kind of getting high on the same thing.
Right.
So it creates this kind of atmosphere of connection. It synthesizes a connection. Is that what you feel like what was happening?
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to be accepted. I was just, you know, I felt like there was some kind of connection there with these people. I mean, I don't know about the people, but just the feeling that I had was like, it made me feel like I didn't worry about my weight or, you know, what they thought of me, you know?
Yeah.
So
you get introduced to it. You like this new feeling and this feeling of accepting and the feeling of being high. Right. I mean, that's the reason why we get addicted, because you know, shit feels good. So what, you know, how long does it stay at this kind of like casual level, or does it ramp up really quick, or what's that like?
Well, it ramped up pretty quick. It was, you know, I was on weed for a little while and then went straight onto cocaine and was around a lot of people doing that. And that, in a matter of maybe a little less than a year, I'd already gotten arrested, and now I'm in drug court. And that didn't work out very well for me. I got kicked out of drug court, but I was introduced to the rooms of recovery. I knew that I didn't know really what was wrong with me. Once I got into the rooms and I met people that were in there, I was like, okay, this makes sense. Only through drug court that I met people in recovery, and that was like that until about 2007. So I think that I was about 2006. I started doing all that stuff, and then in 2007 is when I got introduced to recovery, and it went pretty crazy. It was pretty fast, and Even though I was introduced to recovery, I didn't get clean right away because I still wasn't sure, I didn't know how all of that worked. I didn't know about sponsor, about all these things. I just tried to, I was taking like stuff on the side and whatever. And then, so then I got clean on April 23rd of 2007.
Okay.
Then.
Then.
That's when I first came in. And then it's just.
So you get clean,
Yeah.
2007, April. How long did you stay clean then?
I stayed clean for about a year and a half.
Okay.
Yep.
And then what changed?
I mean, I'm just going back through my memories of all this stuff. So in 2007, I got involved with everything. I enjoyed recovery. I love recovery. I met my ex in 2008, the following year. If there was anything that I could be involved in, I was involved in, and loved recovery. Met someone when I had a little over a year, and it was pretty crazy. So, he's an old school Italian from Brooklyn, and we saw that somebody had disrespected me. He was punching them in their face. That was just how it was. So needless to say, we stopped going to a lot of those meetings because he kept punching people in the face. So I just kind of like slowly stopped going to those meetings, and all the people that I thought were like my friends kind of turned on me. I wasn't really plugged in as much. I mean, I thought I was pretty plugged in, but it was just slowly that kind of took me away from it. And it was very frustrating, and I tried to stay with one home group, and then something had happened again with another person there. And so then I stopped going to that one. And so I don't know, it was a pretty rough time going through that. And then I just kind of was like, I would keep in touch with my sponsor and some of the women, and was slowly kind of pulled away from that.
Yeah.
Through all that stuff.
Into this relationship,
yeah.
Yeah. So when do you start drinking? Do you start drugging again?
It was like right after all that stuff had happened. It was probably like that next, like a couple months ago. We were all at school, the whole family, and just started taking Adderall and got pretty hooked on that. I'm like looking at all these people around me. I'm like, how are you guys with all this noise, focusing in and reading your book and highlighting and everything? I couldn't even. But I wasn't in recovery. I was in recovery. I was still clean, but I wasn't around my people because now I'm no longer going to meetings because of all that stuff. So I remember when I was there and I asked the guy, I said, what is it? And he's like, oh, we're taking Adderall. And then that was it. I remember just taking it. And if I would have been around my network of people, I would have known that was something not to take.
Not to take. Well, you were in school. Like what you were in college?
I was in college. Sorry. Okay. Yeah, I was in college and I was working on my associates in business and, really loving school. Finally had the chance to go to school and was really excited about it. It was with my whole family. And, and so once that happened, I was able to read like everybody else. I was highlighting. I think my classes were going, all things were going pretty good. And then until it wasn't. And then all of us got on it. It was a pretty crazy time. It was just, you don't know unless, now I know about that drug. And I knew when I took it that I shouldn't have taken it, but I took it anyways. Yeah. And it just went on that for quite some time. And my ex didn't know what I was on. He was still clean at that time when I was on it. And things started getting pretty crazy. I was losing weight pretty fast. I was no longer, I was at the school, but I wasn't really going to classes. I was just hanging out. Got involved with selling drugs and to support my habit and, staying up late at night, sorting the cords under the computer table because they were all tangled up, right. That kind of crazy stuff. And so he had no idea. And that was going on for quite some time. And finally, it was like maybe a year or two had passed. I think it was about that next year he had started drinking. And that's when it got pretty crazy, because he didn't know what was going on with me, and he was drinking, and then the combination just caused a lot of abuse and stuff that went on.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of crazy abuse.
Right.
On my side and on his. I was not, maybe I'm justifying stuff, but I won't even go there. But so that was pretty rough then. Yeah.
So it sounds like by getting removed from that community. Right. And then getting into a new community, a different community, right? That, was living in a different way, right?
Right.
And falling into that, and then when the two of you were you using together or?
At first, I was using my thing and he was using his thing, and we
Yeah.
were kind of like, he kept it out in the open and I was the one that's hiding it. And then it got to a point where then I was finally honest to him about doing it, and then we started using together.
Yeah.
And that's when it got, now cocaine was involved, now alcohol was involved,
Right.
and now things got even more insane,
Yeah.
And, that's when just, I don't know how much more to say about all that, but if you have used with your significant other, things got wild, and then
Yeah.
just fill in the blanks. And that's
Yeah.
pretty much how that went from, cheating to abuse to all these things that, I never cheated, and I never was abusive in a physical sense, but with my actions and not being available was another type of abuse, and taking money from the account and things like that.
Yeah.
That was where my abuse came in. So,
Yeah.
it was just it's two addicts using. Anything is bound to happen when you use. So, not having that support network. And then now I'm not talking to my family. We had stopped talking for about 5 years when that time had happened. And then things just went very crazy.
How long does this, very crazy, really crazy.
I mean, yeah.
It's the craziest of times.
Crazy,
no, but I get
crazy.
it. Like, there's a lot of things in there.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I could
you
go
don't
pretty
want to
in
call
depth.
out. Yeah, but it's. I don't want you to dive in any deeper than you want to, right? But there's a lot of stuff happening during that time. How long does that period last? Where, this kind of dysfunctional relationship between your ex and the drugs and everything. How long does that last?
We met in 2008, and I would say until about 2014.
Mm-hmm. What changes then? 2014.
I stopped using the Adderall and started getting back into recovery. Things are still a little bit rocky, but it's not as bad as it was before. And, I just got plugged in again. Still on with, he was drinking, but I wasn't. Then we go back and forth. It kind of was pretty wild at that time. Not as much as it was, but it got better. I think it was like 2013, 2012. I just had stopped using all that. I finally remember, we were in Gainesville, Florida, and then I moved to Jacksonville and got away from that whole area, and still was using for a while I was there. I'm just remembering all this stuff.
Do you remember, was there an activating event or anything that kind of made you go, okay, it's time to break this pattern?
Right. Yeah. Thank you. Psychosis.
Oh,
that changed, and I haven't been back through my story like this deep in a while, so forgive me. But it's pretty cool actually to think about all this stuff and see how far I've come. But I had overdosed on Adderall a couple of times where I was running for my life away from things that were not there. We've all been through that, and so I knew that if I kept staying like that I was going to end up being stuck in a psychosis, killing someone, or getting arrested for, whatever.
Yeah.
And so I just knew. I found a doctor up in Jacksonville. He's a real old guy. And when I walked into his office, I knew I was like, oh my God, this is gonna be so easy. I can continue to use, But I remember once I kept having those psychosis, and I was driving around and, stuck in that, not knowing what was after me, but nothing was after me.
Right.
I finally was like, I was in, and now I have made myself go into the meetings up there in Jacksonville, and I said to my sponsor, this has to stop. I said, my knees were all scraped because I was jumping over a fence to try and get away from whoever was chasing me, and I said, I just want to get clean. What do I do? She was like, you just hit your knees and pray. Mm. And I remember walking into that doctor's office with her on the phone, and I told him, I said, don't ever prescribe me these pills again. And I haven't touched them since.
Wow.
And that was 2013.
Okay.
And then, yeah. So, and then I got into recovery in Jacksonville and just started doing what I needed to do. And my ex wasn't really in the meetings too much. I had to really focus because I felt happier that way.
Did he move with you to?
Hmm?
Okay, so you guys are both in Jacksonville.
Yep.
But at this point, he's respecting your desire to be in recovery and go to meetings, and is he still punching people in the face?
Not then, still like the fear factor of his anger was pretty rough to deal with. And I think that there was some cheating that was going on at that time. So, but respecting, I mean, he wanted me to do well as much as he was capable of letting me do well.
Yeah.
It wasn't as wild as it was before. I just had to keep focusing, and I leaned on the women to be there for me, and talked about what I was going through, and talked about what I thought was the cheating that was going on. And I got to a point where it was like I was playing detective, and I couldn't really enjoy my days because I was like, after work I was running home to see what he was doing.
Right.
And they were like, the girls was like, if you're gonna catch him, you're gonna catch him. There's nothing that you can do about it. God will reveal it when time is right. And so the women in recovery in Jacksonville really helped me through that time. I had home groups and whatever, and it was just like, it was pretty rough because, we wanted to be on the same schedule. So if I had a home group that was a different time or whatever from him, he'd be kind of upset about that.
Yeah. So this time you're getting clean.
Right.
Is this the last time?
Yeah.
This was the last time?
No, it's not. I thought you said this last time in recovery.
No. Well, the last time is
yes!
the last time. But this time that we're talking about, as we're time traveling through your life.
I know.
Through the cosmic tentacles of your storytelling. Yeah.
Yeah.
You doing okay?
Yeah, I'm doing okay.
All right.
I'm just traveling down memory lane, so.
Yeah.
I've never really talked about this stuff ever before.
Really?
It was always like a big secret because we wanted to save our face instead of our butts,
Right.
And you never spoke about this stuff. Yeah. No one ever knew about. I mean, and that's why I'm trying to be careful about how in detail I go, because I don't. It's just kind of like.
Well, but I think you're being, you're both in active addiction during this time, and then you're trying to get clean, and to his best ability, he's trying to give you the space to do that, and when you're in that state, it's hard to. Like what you are now, being other-centered. It's really hard, right? Like, I mean, some of the recovery literature says that selfishness and self-seeking is like the root of our problem, right? That's the real thing going on. It's all about 1, 2, 3. It's all about me,
all about me, right?
And so it's hard when you're in that state or just coming out of active addiction to really gravitate to, I'm gonna put someone else first,
Right.
So, So you're in this recovery and you're working the program. What changes?
At that time, we moved to South Florida, and to be closer to family. We had owned a medical courier company, so we delivered all of this medicine that was infusion pharmaceuticals, and we had gotten and I was clean, and he was kind of clean. And I was kind of clean, things were a little bit more normalized than it was, and living our best life. There was everything that we wanted to do, we were able to do financially because of what the business had brought us. And we're getting married in 2014, and life was good. And then right before our honeymoon, our contract was up with this pharmacy, and so we couldn't. We had to figure things out pretty quickly. And it was just like all our dreams were kind of coming to a halt, what it felt like to us. And it was just like devastating to us. It was like experiencing a death. And before that, like when we went on our honeymoon, there was a full-blown, like I had relapsed again in that short period of time on alcohol, and then him on the cocaine, and and then it's like when you're on vacation, you don't just stop there. You're like, oh, just use in the Bahamas,
Right.
We're just gonna leave that there. Thank you, Butler, appreciate it. No, we came back and we were still doing the same stuff, but it was just even worse. And now it was in a combination of like our business was now no longer.
Yeah.
And still just trying to live up to the Joneses that we created for ourselves with. All these things. We went down to Miami and all these trips and stuff, and it was just like going, you could feel the pain between the two of us, and and losing this business. And so finally, after we sold, when we didn't sell the business, we lost the business. We moved down to South Florida. We were going to be closer to his family and just start up there. You know, and the relapse didn't stop, of course, you know. So we had went on a trip with his, you know, his cousin to Miami during a New Year's, and it was just like living it up, you know. Just money wasn't an issue between his cousin and his girlfriend and us, and table service and all these kind of fun things. And hello, Mrs., you know, say my last name and whatever, you know. I'm like, oh yeah, I like this, you know, anymore, you know, Cadillac margaritas going crazy, and you know, we just experienced the loss of this business, and you know, and that was a great trip to be on.
Yeah.
And then, you know, coming back home, now it was just like starting a new life. You know, I was a felon, so I couldn't live in that building that his mom had gotten for us, you know, the apartment. So it was already on a lie, and you know, I didn't have the recovery. I didn't plug myself in, and you know, he was trying to find work, and I went back down to Miami to that same hotel because I liked the, hey, Mrs. You know, I felt important down there in a life that I did not feel important.
Yeah.
You know, from X, Y, and Z and all the above, you know. And so, you know, I just like took the card and went down there and just, you know, kind of like enjoyed that whole experience because I felt like I was somebody, I guess, you know.
Yeah.
And, you know, and basically I came back up finally from you can't stay in Miami for too long, that's for sure. Came back up, and I was, you know, I just, you know, there's still the abuse that was going on, you know, and I don't think that he knew how to process things or how to deal with it, and I think that he only knew that through physical and, you know, control of all sorts and stuff. And I think that, yeah, I don't know, it was just kind of a rough time. But then, you know, I realized that, you know, he put this tracker thing on my phone, and it was like, you go to a meeting. If you don't go to a meeting, then we're done. So I remember driving in West Palm Beach, and I was driving down to the meeting, and I was like, just like holding on for dear life, you know, to go to this meeting. I'm like, you can do this, you can do this. And I pull up, and of course my diseased brain was like, look at all these people here. You know, I'm at Crossroads in South Florida. I'm like, look at all these people. Oh, here we go again. And then I just walked in, and I sat down in my first meeting down there, and I just felt like,
yeah,
you know, I was around my people, just, you know, just talking to them about everything that I experienced, kind of, sort of, still trying to save face and not talk about, I couldn't really go into depth about things a little bit like I am now, you know, because I didn't want to put that out there, that I was going through all that.
Yeah.
No one even knows, but now everybody knows, so.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so I got back into recovery then, and that was, you know, it was a life or death thing. I didn't want to, I still wasn't talking to my family at the time, maybe my sister, but I felt very alone. You know, I didn't have my friends, I didn't have my family, I just had him and his family. And that was just like, but now I got back into recovery, and I got close with all these people again in a new area.
Yeah.
And got a sponsor right away, started working the steps, got involved.
What's that like, going through the steps? Like, at this point, this is like your third or fourth run,
or sixth or
startup
right.
onto the steps. What's that like for, you know, for someone to do that? To like, it's like, here we are back at step one again. And I guess it's a different sponsor, so it's a little different. There's a little different dynamic. But is there any, like, what are you feeling as you're starting the steps again, you know?
Well, I think that every relapse I just experienced so much pain. I didn't really care about the specifics. I just wanted to stay clean. Yeah. And I didn't want to feel that insanity that I was creating in my life.
Right.
I didn't really care what they wanted me to do. I just was, you know, you don't care about the things that bother you later on. You're just like, whatever. I don't care if they chant. I don't care if people are on their phone. I don't care if you walk in late or you say I'm an addict, I'm an alcoholic. I don't really care. Whatever it is, I'm just ready to be clean.
Yeah.
You don't care if you know what I'm saying? Like, recovery is recovery. You don't care about all those Naziist type things that they NA Nazi, AA Nazi, you know?
Right.
Like, you don't care about that stuff anymore, because all the pain and everything that you've just experienced is, you're just like, yeah, I need to start on step one. Where else is there to start? You know?
I love it.
You know?
Yeah.
So, but I knew, because I had already been in recovery before, what I needed to do again.
You had the roadmap.
I had the basics down, you know?
Yeah.
I knew I needed to find a sponsor within the first week, maybe less. And if I didn't really care for her or not, it didn't matter. It was just as long as I found somebody.
Yeah.
And just got back in the swing of that motion, you know? And it was great because I felt like I was starting to make more moves towards having a life back instead of, what I was what I was living.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was different sponsor, different recovery, different everything, different area. And a lot of Northerners down there, so that was pretty cool. She just had a different approach than all the other sponsors I had. It was more in depth, and I use a lot of the same things that she taught me today with my sponsees. Just getting a God box and a plant and all these things. So
yeah. But what you said reminds me of kind of like what's read in a lot of these meetings. Which is kind of like the caveat, right? Like, if you're willing to be rigorously honest, and if you're willing to go to any lengths, this is going to work. Right? Like, those are the two caveats to this thing, or to the steps, really. Right. Like, to the steps, it's like, if you have those things, and then this will work, right? And so you're saying that each time you kind of get into this thing, you have those two things: this willingness to do whatever. To give yourself entirely to the process, and an ability to be rigorously honest with yourself and others. Yeah.
And that was the one thing I know that my disease doesn't want me to be honest, because it wants to feed off of those lies to keep me sick for whenever a traumatic thing happens later on, so that it can attack. Boom, Yeah. So I just said to myself is that no matter how horrible it sounds, I'm going to be as honest as I can with the sponsor.
Yeah.
And she was the only one that knows everything.
Yeah.
Nobody knew a lot of this stuff that I spoke about. It was kind of they started to figure it out. Some things my family knew.
Yeah.
But I just knew that that's what I needed to do. I didn't do a perfect program, but I did the best that I could then, just kind of letting all that stuff out. Working through the steps and being vigilant, not getting myself complacent, and kind of with each relapse, learning the mistakes that I made from the last one, so that if I saw the signs for it, I could stop it in its tracks and reevaluate and push through.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which started with honesty.
Yeah.
But,
so we're gonna pick back up, maybe fast forward.
Okay, cool.
But we're gonna take a little break.
Okay.
We're gonna play a little clip from Montana Society, and then we'll be back with the rest of Mira's story.
Thank you.
Montana Society, an inspiring docuseries about a group of addicts who endeavor to repurpose an underground nuclear bunker in Paradise Valley, Montana. Along the way, they learn to work together under the wild leadership of Dean, a financial guru and outdoorsman who has his money on the line. In the end, will they learn to repurpose their pain and the bunker into something new and wonderful? Find out on this season of the Montana Society.
All right, we're back. If you listen to that, that's Montana Society. 10 episodes, 4 addicts in an underground bunker in Montana, trying to renovate it in a very alcoholic fashion. It's wild, and episode 6 is launching, and who knows when you're listening to this, but all 10 episodes will eventually be on the Most High Media app, and you can watch all 10. You can binge them. Yeah.
That's nice. I like
Yeah.
that.
That's you can binge recovery content.
Yes.
Yeah. That's one thing. It's okay.
Oh, okay.
Right. So this is we're going through the highways and the byways and the bridges of your life.
Yes.
And we're exploring the scenery, and we're in this place in Florida, West Palm, and you're recommitted. Is this the last run?
No.
Yeah.
No, I wish it was, but no. Mm-mm.
Yeah. So, what happens?
All right.
I mean, is this or is what's happening kind of the same? Does the same pattern eventually repeat, and it's back to the same thing?
All right, so yeah, I same thing. Okay. Good job. Well, I think that, yeah, it's the same. I mean, kind of the same. I'm just trying to think back because I haven't really, with the trauma that I've been through, my brain sometimes just blocks all that stuff out, and still I start bringing it up, and I'm like, whoa, that stuff really happened, but it's fun to dig it up. So I'm just thinking back when it started, like, stop going to meetings again. That's been the basic stuff, and it was very hard for me because, again, we weren't on the same page. So I'm really gung-ho in recovery and love recovery. Now I'm doing what I need to do. Now he's really bad on alcohol. So, and he's getting on cocaine. And with that comes a lot of extra stuff, everything from A to Z was going on in my house. And so, I was clean that time for about 3 years. And I was working in treatment. And I was coming home to a full-blown addict every night.
Have you ever heard the term culture eats ideology for lunch?
It sounds amazing. No, I have not.
So it's a really fascinating concept because it's kind of what's going on there, right? Like you can have a really good ideal that kind of gets, like you can have a great experience on maybe a spiritual weekend or a retreat. But then when you come back into the same sick culture, the culture will swallow up all the ideology that you just got. And so culture eats ideology for lunch. So it doesn't matter how much you get fed the right things or right. And it's also like you can't think your way into right living. You have to live your way into right thinking. Right. And so if you're coming from these and you're getting all the ideas and all the fundamentals and all the tools, but then you're going back into this culture that is essentially sick in its own way, right? And it's like eating up the whole thing that you just experienced.
Right.
Am I projecting, or does that sound right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's hard when you're in the moment to help the person that is right next to you because, I taught this stuff. I was in recovery. I know, I don't know if I should lean back.
You're good.
But I didn't know how to deal with my own husband. I didn't know how to help him out, I was in it, but I said, working in recovery and being in the program and taking my program very seriously, I wasn't going to allow that to deter me because I saw how being taken away from recovery before had just created so much pain that it didn't need to happen, Yeah. And I fought through it. But again, it was supposed to be kept a secret. Like, we weren't supposed to. Everybody knew what I was using, but no one was supposed to know what he used,
Right.
But it really limited my team effort because I couldn't tell his mom. I couldn't tell his brother. I couldn't tell my family. I don't think I was even speaking to them then still.
Yeah.
And so this was like a battle on my own, but I did speak to the people in recovery and where I worked, and I was like, I just don't know what to do, And I was working second shift at the treatment center, and we had that tracker on each other's phones, so I could see when he was going to the dope man. I try and call him up, and I'm like, come on, let me help you. Like, there's nothing I could really say. He had his mindset, and so every night I would. So basically, like, it was just, the biggest thing was because we didn't have the same shifts that he was coming home to an empty house that it made him want to use. And so I was like, and finally I started talking to his brother, and I'm like, maybe I should just quit my job or something. He's like, no, don't do that. And finally a blessing happened where I was switched to first shift at this treatment center. So I was like, oh, thank you, God. Now he's going to stop because I'll be home. I'll be available for him. And of course that didn't work. That wasn't. Yeah. Now I'm just home when he's using, and the abuse and all that stuff that went on. And, I just didn't know what to do. I still didn't know what to do. I'm teaching this all day long, and I'm coming home, and I'm like, I don't know what to do for this man except for just start calling in people. And I didn't dare call his mother. You're not supposed to do that. But I tried to call his cousin. And I just begged him. I was like, he would cry every morning and then be high every night.
Yeah.
And you just knew like clockwork. And I'm like, I remember myself just laying on the couch and just like engrossing in Law and Order. And
yeah. Dong dong.
Yeah. Just like, was trying to like not see him escape. Yeah. Going back and forth, and I just couldn't do anything about it,
Yeah.
And I mean, And then he started to be clean for a little while, and then the idea was, well, we'll just start. Like, I guess I don't know what the idea was, but we were ready to have a kid or something. He stopped using for a while, and I had gotten pregnant, and I was like, okay. In my mind, not knowing what I know now or in recovery, like, oh, okay, then maybe this will stop him. This will help, and that was not the case at all. He's like, oh, I'll be clean. Then he had a weight loss surgery, just like the one I had, but now we're together, and he was always very gorgeous. I didn't care what, whatever he had going on, whatever size he was, I didn't really care. He was, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then he lost all that weight, and then he was like invincible. You couldn't tell him anything,
Right.
And along with that drug use and the lack of not being able to have the food that he used to have and losing all this weight, now the cocaine use got even worse.
Right.
So, but then I'm pregnant with our daughter, and it's supposed to change. Things are supposed to, all right, when we have her, I'm gonna stop.
Yeah.
And it never happened,
Right.
of course. And so I had our daughter, and still it just got even worse. So now I'm with the baby alone while he would be gone.
Mm-hmm.
And after I had her, maybe like a month after I had her, I relapsed.
It was just too much to bear, like all those kind of emotional triggers happening constantly, and then now here's a whole human.
That
you're to care for and nurture. That's a lot of responsibility and a lot of pressure. And here's this partner that is, ideally you're creating a life with, but the same thing is kind of happening, right? So it's discouraging, and so go back to the thing that does what it says it'll do.
It was like, you can't beat them, join them.
Yeah.
And I've never been a mother before. I didn't know how this was all, how this is supposed to work. I mean, I wanted to go to the meetings, and it was like, okay, well, no, you should just stay home because you just have the baby, so whatever. But I had not been going because I was so pregnant,
Mm-hmm.
Whatever. You know what you know now, right? But I didn't reach out more to the people. I felt so enclosed in this apartment, and again, I wasn't supposed to be there because I was the felon, so I couldn't be, all these combinations, and there was really nobody except for my sponsor. But if I knew what I knew now, I, instead of so concerned with saving him, I should have left and saved my daughter and I. And in my mind, I was just like, I loved her, but I was seeing a man that was just falling apart right in front of me, and I just didn't know what to do for him.
Yeah.
And so then I fell.
Yeah. Well, you're working with the information you had.
Right. Yeah.
It's easy to look back and go, I should have, but at the time, you're using the information that you have and doing the best with what you had at the time.
You just kind of forget everything that while you're in the moment with someone next to you that's using. Like, that it's not, you can't ever get them clean. Once they start using, that's it. Like, unless they decide to come around with the pain or whatever, there's nothing that you can do.
Yeah.
There's nothing you can do, but you feel like you should be doing everything, but it's not going to save them.
Right.
Now they're just a shell of a person, just operating as your significant other.
Yeah. So I'm sure there's a lot that goes in, and all this is like, thank you for being so open and honest about all this.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to get to this last time getting sober.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to know what's working now and what's the real big difference that's happening now that didn't happen in all these previous times and attempts. And I don't want to skip over if there's anything you feel like you should share, but just for the sake of time, of what this time, what's happening that didn't really happen, or is there? I don't know.
Well, the last bit I wanted to mention is when we really started using, when I joined him, that we started using crack, and that's when, coke, your life goes down. Crack, you just might as well just, everything is gone. It's a totally different experience than what I've ever had before.
Yeah.
And I didn't really even know that, so I was trying it first, and then now I do. So,
right.
But it just like completely changed, like from having everything to now we're living out of our car, and stuff was nuts. And so then going off to prison, fast forward, like we're trying to get onto this next segment, but I was just wanted to talk about the introduction of that part, and experiencing prison, and then coming out And
you went to prison.
I went to prison, yeah.
And that's for drug use, getting caught, or?
Well, yeah, it was a robbery that wasn't really a robbery. I mean, it was I took $5 worth of stuff from a store in Florida, and the tenant was trying to be a hero and put his hands on me, and my ex saw it, so he maced him. So they changed it from a petty theft to a robbery, and so on the news and everything. I'm like, wow. My friends call me the Sour Patch robber because that was one of my snacks I took. Yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah, not a real robber, but that's just they did. It's just only a mix of it. So now I've tried just shortly after trying crack for the first time. It was 6 months later, and our daughter was taken, and we were on the streets, and then that next June we were arrested. It just went wild. So we thought we were getting 3 to 5 years, and I didn't really know what was going to happen. I've never experienced charges like this before, and still, just like, okay, not realistic with what was going on. But anyways, they convinced me because after our daughter was taken in October, that, pretty much like you had a year to do what you're supposed to do. So we had her in March. She was taken in October. I had until next March to finish all these things. And we didn't because we were arrested and we were high, so we didn't do it. So they basically told us like, you're just gonna have to sign over your custody. There's like basically you're going off to prison. His mom was like, we'll take care of her. I didn't really know that I had any other option, and I thought I was going away for a long time, so I knew she'd be in the safest spot is there. So that happened, and then we went to prison. We got sentenced to about a year and a day, and when I got out, I went to my family's house, and he went down to south. So we were going to be, and I don't even like talking about my daughter's situation because, that was just kind of a rough time. But, I know that through the process that'll all work out one day. But anyways, I was trying to go a little faster so we
No, I mean, I don't want to rush you through it, but it's
like, let me mention prison and lose my daughter, right? And the crack use, let's not forget that, right?
Yeah, right.
It's kind of like important to talk about.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I mean, yeah. So crack is a whole nother beast, right? And it just kind of unleashes a whole new level of darkness in your life and dysfunction and unmanageability into your life that wasn't there before.
Right.
Right. And so when you go to prison and you get out of prison, do you commit to a new way of life or what?
Well, I went back to the same area that I was living with my family in Gainesville, and I get back into recovery. I didn't use the whole time I was in prison, and it was just pretty overwhelming because now I'm processing the fact of being out, the pressures of that, being with my family now when I had been with my husband or my ex, whatever, and he was down there, and I didn't have my daughter, and he was with another woman, and all these things that happened even then when we were supposed to be working on it separately. It was just like so much information to process, and then just seeing like where my life is now, it was just overwhelming. And I was familiar with the people in that area because that's where I'd gotten clean back in 2007, and I just didn't really plug myself in to that area. I didn't do what I needed to do. I still was clean for quite some time. I wouldn't say quite some time, but after getting out, I got a job, saved up my money, got a vehicle, did all these things. I wasn't really sure what was going to happen with him because, he wasn't being straight up with me. I'm like, if we're not going to work out, just let me know. Don't make me think that we're trying to get back to something that's not going to happen if you're with another woman down there. Yeah. And that just set me off because I'm like, well, how many times do I have to experience this to really get it, right? But, loyal to a fault, I guess, and so I was doing the plugged in thing, and I remember just trying to when I saw him going to different places and lying to me, and I knew the truth, and my friend was like, don't worry about him. Why don't you just, and this is girl recovery, why don't you just get on Tinder? It'll get your mind off it. I was like, Tinder, what's that? I don't know.
Solid advice.
Yeah.
Great advice.
Pretty crazy. I was like, okay. So that's what I did. I got onto Tinder and just started just seeing what else was out there. Because I hadn't been with anybody in 14 years or 12 at the time, whatever it was at that time. And, so just texting just to keep my mind off of it because I didn't want to think about him anymore, just talking to different people and whatever. And went out on a few dates and just to see what was out there. But I didn't I didn't know what I was doing. I hadn't been on the scene in quite some time, and it was pretty different. I was just trying to like just get him out of my mind because it was just like I didn't want to have to go through this anymore. And you know, I remember going out with all these guys. I'm seeing them, and I was still talking to the girls at the prison, and they were like, "Yeah, you know," and I'm working my job, and I'm counting change. I remember one day counting change in my car to make payment for my car payment, and I was like, "There has to be a better way than this." And then I'm keeping in contact with the girls there. They gave me an idea of going onto this website. And they're like, "Oh, you'll make really good money and blah, blah, blah." And I was like, "Okay, I'll just check it out." And so I did. I started going on that website, and it was just for sugar daddies. And, you know, they kind of show you the lifestyle and, you know, and pay you for it. And I was like, oh, well, what better than that?
Right.
And so got into that and still clean, you know, just seeing different, you know, whatever, doctors, lawyers, owners, you know, people that were in a higher status than me, and just sucking all that environment in, you know. I don't want to bang into your thing. And it was insane. And I was clean for a while, and, you know, and until I wasn't, you know. And then one of the guys that I met with was you know, using meth, and before I went up there, I'd already kind of, you know, relapsed on smoking weed, and it just kind of set the tone. I didn't know. I mean, I was, you know, well, let me just stop. I didn't start with him. I was around the wrong people in Gainesville, Florida, and got on acid, you know, just going the hallucinogenic route, not really even, you know, knowing that I messed up, but just kind of like just going with a forward motion. I'd already relapsed on weed and stuff, and anyways, yeah, so that went on for a while, and from that was just full-blown using. So now this glamorous lifestyle of traveling and doing all these things just went down real fast. And so I had went on these trips and was now using harder drugs pretty quickly, and I came back to Gainesville. And I don't think after that one trip I even went back home and saw my family. I just went right to the streets. And just went back and just, I was already had crack before, so now I went and found crack pretty much crack in Gainesville, and having a head full of recovery, knowing about how this is going to end, just in this like, just screw it type mode, and now I'm in the traps in Gainesville, Florida, and I have all this money I have saved up from doing that sugar baby thing. Now it's like I'm getting robbed. People are, they see a white girl in the projects, blah, blah, blah. It was pretty crazy. And it got to a point where all my money was gone. Things were stolen. I still have my car, and I'm sitting at a gas station, and I have nothing, not even enough gas to put in there. So that's the worst case scenario when you have like no drugs, no money, and you're like, oh my God, my life, you know?
Yeah.
Then a guy pulled up next to me, and he was like, yeah. He's like, you good? And I'm like, yeah, I'm good. You know, I'm like crying or whatever. And he went in the store and came back out and was like, what's going on? And so he's like, get in my car. And I got in. And he's like, I said, really honestly, I'm just out of drugs, and my life is horrible. And he explained a little bit. He's like, oh, you should have said that. I have it. And I was like, oh, okay. And he took me back over to where he got, you know, because he was some sort of plug, and gave me some drugs, and then kept feeding him. I was enjoying it. I was like, okay, you know, we're talking, whatever. And now knowing what I know, like that was like that psychology of building to having that type of, you know, where it was going to be into trafficking. Later on. I mean, I was just too high to even think about that, but you know, I didn't know. Now I know. That went on. Now I had a little baby crack habit. Now it's a huge crack habit, and I'm with this guy, and now it runs out, and he was like, well, you owe me. And I'm like, what do you mean owe you? You just gave me all this stuff. And so that's when it started. He started creating a page, got me up on a website, and all this stuff kind of went on. And it was pretty insane. It happened pretty quickly, and I was around a lot of bad people, like almost overnight. Anyways, that went on, and you know, I was going, you know, all these areas and didn't know a lot of people around, like really bad men. You know, went through a lot of crazy stuff, and like in between highs, I knew what was happening, but I was just too high to even, and didn't, you know, just was stuck. And anyways, so long story short, I just went and traveled all over. Finally made it up to Georgia. You know, a lot of stuff had happened in that, but I'm just, you know, if you were in that lifestyle, you know what happened.
Yeah.
And so I made it up to Georgia, and good old Quality Inn in Duluth. They are something else over there. That's a good spot. But they were doing a sting operation. And that's how I was able to get out of the whole thing.
Wow.
And nothing like SWAT running in on your hotel room to really, like, you know, but he wasn't there in the room at the time. And I had all the drugs in there, you know, the usual, you know, the whole thing, all the drugs are there. All these guys are masked, and I just was like, holy crap. I was excited, and I was also scared in the same sense because they caught me with all those drugs.
But you're excited because you have a chance to get out.
Yeah, excited. Like, not excited like the cops are going, excited that, excited that this was going to be over.
Yeah.
I just was so stuck in, I didn't know what to do or how to get out.
Right, yeah.
You know? So I went to jail. I sobered up, got away, you know, got away from all that craziness. And I knew, like, I slept for the first week while I was in there. And thank God for Gwinnett County having, like, that GRIP program in the jail. Because without that, I would not have, I don't think that it would have, would have been the same experience. Because when you go to jail, everybody knows you become a better drug dealer, better prostitute, better scammer by all those wonderful people in there. And then, you know, getting clean and being, you know, getting into that program while I was in jail really changed everything.
What was that? What's the program?
It's called GRIP. It's Gwinnett Rehabilitation While Incarcerated Program.
Okay.
And Deputy Wilson runs it. And basically what it is you still smoke cigarettes in Gwinnett County Jail. I don't know if anybody knows that, but that's was like a plus for me because coming off all that stuff. But what we did was we did classes. They had anger management. They had John Maxwell. They had substance abuse classes, meditation classes for us while we were locked up in there, along with some people that were allowed to have cats. We had a garden in there, like all that basic, like being in a program, but in jail type thing to do. We had Zumba classes and PT and got plenty of food. And, you know, it was just like got me back in the routine of living. I had a job. I worked in admissions, so we would go to our job every day. And you know, if you didn't do it like you're supposed to, it wasn't like in treatment now where people are like, oh, my bed's uncomfortable, Susie's being mean to me, or she stole my pork chops or whatever. Like, you don't say nothing. You know, you're either you do what you're supposed to do or you go in the box. No one wants to get kicked out of this program.
Right.
You know, and you don't disrespect people. You don't disrespect their things, and you just do everything you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
So after this GRIP program, what they do is that Gwinnett County has something worked out with them that they will help you pay for your first month and entry fee into a program if you can get yourself into a program, or you know, Deputy Wilson helps you to get into a place. And that's what I wanted for myself, is I wanted to finally get into a program, because when I got out of prison I didn't have anything like that in Florida that I thought. And I really wanted to do this right this time. And I knew what it looked like is that I needed a year long of recovery. However it looked, I was just going to make sure that happened. And getting back in the swing of that kind of stuff was just really important to me, to make sure that I had it planned out in my head the moment that I got out of there, what I was going to do. So I didn't know if I was going to work release or treatment, because that was what the sentencing was. And then one day they just released me to the streets of Georgia. And I was like, wow. They just like told me to pack it up, and I thought I was going to treatment or work release, but they didn't. They just let me go. So I was like, I had my brown bag, I remember, and only the clothes I got arrested in. And I was like, don't bite the bait. Don't bite the bait. You know, just kind of like do the forward motion. I went to the gas station by the jail, and I asked the guy for directions, because I got a sponsor while I was in jail, and started working steps with her. And it was just a woman that had more time than me. And she walked me through the steps, and they said that the Gwinnett room was right around the corner. So when I left out of there, I went to the racetrack, and as I was walking out, Deputy Wilson handed me a number to Out of Darkness, because he knew what I had went through, and he said, call them. And so I was like, okay. So I just knew I know that when you get released for any facility or any institution, you need to hit a meeting within the first 24 hours. Yeah. So I knew that was on my mind. I didn't really know what this number was, but I called it when I got there, and I had a choice between two different numbers, the bad people or the good people to call. And I had tried to call the bad person at first, and I didn't get through. And Then I called just a old friend that I used with.
Yeah.
And then I called that other number, and it was the Out of Darkness answered. And so I said, listen, I'm going to the Gwinnett room. I don't know how far it is from here, but I'm going to that. You can pick me up from there. So I did the intake. They have like teams that come out with women that have been through this kind of stuff to help you out.
Yeah.
And they said it was like 15 minutes from the jail was a Gwinnett room. They are lying when they're telling you that, because it took me 2 hours to walk to get there.
It was 15 minutes by skateboard.
By skateboard, not, and I didn't know. I had no phone or anything. I just told the guy to write the directions down, and I followed it down Constantine to something or whatever. I don't even remember the streets now, but I got there, and I did a 6 o'clock meeting, and I shared, and then the team came and picked me up.
Wow.
It was really, really cool. I was like, finally, I made it. And I'm like, oh, thank God. Now it really starts. I just knew what recovery could offer me and how beautiful it had been before. I just needed to be on this right track. And so, went into Out of Darkness and really loved the program that they had there. And you get 4 weeks of just getting back to the routine of stuff. They give you all the clothes and everything you want. And that's what I'm grateful for them, is that they brought me to the church, Atlanta Dream Center. And that's how I met them. They don't really talk about too much of drugs or anything. They just talk more about scripture. And I got baptized and I got closer with God. And that's something that I had been missing this whole time. I grew up in the church, but I didn't really, we had kind of changed beliefs because we changed, we moved around so much,
Right.
And the love from that church, the love that I was feeling finally from God, and that connection that I had to God was a deal. Just everything changed.
Yeah.
Just feeling like I belonged again, and that they weren't afraid to worship. And they weren't afraid to love, and they didn't care who you were, what you had to offer. Is just, as long as you love God, we're here for you. And even if you don't, we still love you.
Yeah.
It was just like something I've never experienced before. And I think a lot of people that I bring to that church, I'm like, you got to check it out, and they do, and they love it. Everybody loves it, because I want them to see what I see. And then sometimes you go into places, people are church hurt or whatever, and they don't have that kind of love, and people are like, what do you wear? I'm like, just wear clothes.
Yeah.
And that was so important for me to have those 4 weeks of just really getting close to God and building up that relationship with Atlanta Dream Center and those people, because I needed that.
Yeah.
From there, I went to Grand Recovery. After that, things didn't really, it wasn't a great fit for me as far as like the after program. The next one, I was going to go to an 18-month program, but it wasn't the right fit for me. I'm just going to, so after that, I said, you know what? I called my mom up. I was like, listen, this isn't going to work out for me. I'm out in the middle of nowhere, and I just want you to come and get me. But I didn't want to end it. I just wanted to continue. So my mom and my sister and my niece came up and got me. I hadn't seen them in a long time, it felt like forever.
Yeah.
They came and picked me up all the way in Georgia, and we went to a hotel. And I went up to my pastor and said, I'm sorry, it just didn't work out, but I am going to get back into a program. And my family stayed with me for a week at that hotel, and I stayed a week by myself at the hotel. And now, being what I've went through and being at a hotel, you have a couple of some real factors there, right? And I just wasn't going to allow that to be part of it. And so I got plugged in on Zoom to the AA meetings, Sisters Stay in the Course. I had the church people from everybody came and picked me up at different times. I got plugged in. I got a sponsor all through Zoom, and went to that meeting every single night along with other ones. And, just was got super plugged in. So I made it through that whole week at a hotel, being, what I've been through, and not using and not doing anything.
At this point, how much time have you gotten stringed together clean between jail and prison and jail and the program and all that stuff?
This was June, July, August, September, October, about 5 months, 6 months. Yeah, at this point. Yeah, about 5 months.
Yeah. It was still a very tender place, but you had a community
right
that was gathered around you, loving on you, giving you opportunity and caring for you. Yeah.
I did. It was the most. I don't think that they realize. I think they do now. I don't think they realize that. I think for any place is that welcoming, and that love. When you lived a lifestyle that was loveless, and people were out to get you or see what they can get from you, and coming in there, that was so important to me.
Yeah.
From that church, and then finding God and just starting my life over. that was that's what changed this time around. Is that, and then after that, then I went into, while I waited there, and I went to church and I hung out with them, and then I went and I was waiting for a bed in Grand Recovery, which is like a 30-day program. I just really wanted to I had like the Christian, got closer with God program, and now I'm gonna learn some more tools and just kind of figure out what I missed and what I need to add in, and maybe some other, just get some therapy, and so that's what I got from the Grand Recovery. And then I graduated from their little program, and then I said, okay, so now what's next? So I went into sober living at We Are Living Proof, which is a great program. All of them are great programs. And while I got into sober living, I was like, I still want to do an IOP while I'm here, because I didn't really know what sober living was. That we called it 3/4 type thing in South Florida. So and I did IOP, and I got a therapist while I was there. I started working while I was in sober living, because I didn't really know.
Well, and in therapy, you're dealing with all this trauma and the aftermath of all the trauma and processing things. I imagine, right? So you're doing a lot of extensive healing, and you're in the sober living, which is keeping some guardrails up and some accountability to keep you from kind of going off the rails again.
And the one thing that's different is that I'm doing this journey by myself, and I'm not letting any distractions. And I'm having a plan in my head of what I want to see as far as my recovery goes. I don't know how it's going to actually play out, but I knew that it had to be a year long, and then these are the things that I wanted to do. I envisioned before, like a step down process, so. Go hit the microphone. So.
Well, and then you have this spiritual experience, right? This thing that happens between you and God, right? So there's kind of a new factor. There's a new player in your life at this point, right? There's something else there that wasn't necessarily present. Before. Well, it was always present, but you weren't as in tune to it.
No. I mean, I knew that that's what I had been missing this whole time. And it was just like tapping into that and developing that, and just, being at however it looked. I didn't know how to really, I knew how to pray, but I didn't know how to really pray. I grew up Episcopalian for a short little bit. So I'm coming into Atlanta Dream Center. It's definitely not, like sit down, sit, kneel, or like, It was a totally different experience, and that's what I needed. I needed to learn how to worship. I needed to learn how to pray and how to read my Bible and be connected with other people that had that as well, because I just didn't really have that, obviously, So, and then after that, then I graduated We Are Living Proof. I went through the steps. I just said I was done with that, and I moved out and got rented a room from some people. I was there for a little short time, and then after that, I was sponsoring women. I got involved at whatever I knew in that area. I shared my story. I did all these things, but it was just time for me to be out of that area. I was just like ready I knew that there was something else for me to do. So then I came over to Bankhead.
And getting involved with the Atlanta Dream Center and the work you're doing now.
Yeah.
So, hearing your story makes sense why you're, living so passionately about helping others, because, you had this kind of extreme life in addiction.
Right. Yeah.
So why not have this extreme life in recovery with God? Right. Yeah.
Like able to operate off of straight chaos and fast paced, go, and that was like the lifestyle was what was expected. And now in recovery, I'm just doing the same thing, but in more of a positive sense, and just learning what was hard for me on my journey, and so how I can help those people out, and never forgetting what it was like to be in their position. And understanding that pain of like, you want to get out, but you just don't know how. And sometimes it just takes a person to be out there.
The right time. One call, that's all.
What's called, that's all. Little change makes a change.
Wow. The other thing is, those 2 phone calls you had after jail, like you had the devil on one line, but the Lord always picks up.
Right.
He's got that Hello.
Always picks up the phone.
Always picks. We don't always hear what he's saying, but he always. The Lord ain't got a voicemail.
No.
No.
There's no answering machine.
There's no answering machine up in heaven.
He's always available, right? He's like, yeah, I got you. No worries.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so I mean, again, like this is why we call this the seat of service, because I'm so sure that people who are listening or will listen to this will hear their own story, and they'll be empowered by hearing what you went through and that you've lived through it and you've been able to change your life and you're living a purpose-driven life now and you're enacting change in other people's lives.
Right.
So thank you for being so honest and open and transparent and sharing all that. So we end with, just some final thoughts.
Okay.
Like the Jerry Springer.
Okay.
But you get to be Jerry.
Okay.
So
it's not, you aren't the father type stuff?
No.
We're not doing that? Okay. I'm just joking.
You get a car. And you get a car.
I would just say that.
So if the person who's watching this, and they've made it all the way to this point, right? What do you say to that person who's considering this way of life? What would you say to them? What do you say to these people when you meet them on the street?
I mean, I just tell them that I understand their pain. I know what it's like to be vulnerable and be taken advantage of and to be sucked into a drug that you pay with your mind, body, and soul to help you forget everything that you love. And, this is the most freedom I've had in a very, very long time, what I'm doing. And that's not just for myself, but helping others to have freedom. Yeah. And this way of life is way better than I ever could imagine. And it's just starting out.
Amen.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here, Mira, and sharing your amazing story. And that's it. This is the Most High Show, and we'll be back next week. Thank you, Jeff, for your lesson.
Yeah.